Well, hello everyone. With the War of the Rohirrim nearly upon us, I thought I would take a look at a previous animated adaptation of Lord of the Rings. Rings 1, and that, while not without its defenders, there still remains something a divisive subject in the fanbase, is over or 4 decades later. Er, so, oh, this film was released in the year 1978, which also adapted both The Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers combined. And though infamously, even though it was meant as the first of at least a two-part storyline, the idea to make this was vetoed. I believe the audiences would not see a multi-part story. This was a pre-Empire Strikes Back, pre-MCU, and pre-Wicked timeframe, obviously, so let's talk about how the 1978 version of Lord of the Rings is directed by Ralph Bakshi, so let's begin. Though hardly the first or the last film that Bakshi directed to get a divisive response, it is one several of such films has gained something a cult following, and even though it's not my favorite adaptation, and speaking as someone who first read the omnibus version of the book when they were 9, with the appendices, and I've read it multiple times more since then, and it still is like a fascinating look at a very different time for fantasy filmmaking, and also did a lot of interesting things artistically as well. I mean, it certainly is not the first film or the last that Bakshi used to integrate elements of rotoscoping and live actors, basically like a precursor of modern motion capture for those unfamiliar. Or it definitely makes a film at times quite trippy as well. This being the 70s after all. And even though some of the designs of the characters are a bit it's odd by today's standards, with Samwise, my favorite character, and arguably he he say Gollum getting the most obvious effects of this. Yes, yes, it's definitely a not without designs that actually do who fit the theme. I mean, with Gandalf off being probably my favorite design, fine, and with Legolas being a close second, looking just a bit like Link, if you'll forgive the lighting scheme in here, or just put new bulbs in, and yeah, and even in Strider Aragorn and his tunic definitely would not be out of place in an episode of Masters of the Universe or later on and it's definitely there are times where the pacing lulls a bit, even for all those people who are often poked fun at how much walking is done in the Jackson trilogies. There's others where it feels like you're speed running the books as if you're listening to like an audio companion at double speed, almost. I mean, granted, a lot of key scenes are there, such as the unexpected party, a that's where Bilbo plays a trick during his 71st birthday, a and which is in layman's terms basically living over a century, and up to the climactic final battle of Helm's Deep, who, even though the blue lighting is definitely the most recognizable version of this these days, is I will say like the red lighting is not without its finer points either. I mean, it's definitely be a very different adaptation and another example of working with limitations they had at the time rather than against them. It's not to say that there are not legitimate issues with the film. Um, I mean, the most obvious one I've often poked fun at in various conversations online, and would be with then trying to rename him Saruman into Aruman under belief that audiences would confuse who's him and Sauron, and even that ended up not being that consistent with, with Saruman on and Aruman alternating via inconsistent dubbing, and 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 it also means that some character introductions are a bit quicker, if not outright sped up, or just outright excised, where right as Frodo and Sam set off because Samwise caught wind of about what was going on, even with Frodo going under her the alias Underhill, and right before they go through like the farmlands, like, oh hi Pippin and Merry, right? So, and they do indeed he'd show up throughout the rest of the movie, so it's kind of interesting to see how they just right up there. Here, besides, it does miss out on the admittedly entertaining scene, which was thankfully in the Jackson version, and where they try to pull a prank with a dragon firework at the party, and end up getting caught. I still really kind of like the anecdote about how look surprise is on their faces when they put the firework in the wrong places because were completely real. That is sometimes most convincing performance when the unexpected happens right on camera, just like that. Well, the film ends after Helm's Deep with Gandalf tossing his sword into the air like a much sharper mortarboard on graduation day. There are some broad strokes connections to the Bronk Boss adaptations, which was preceded by The Hobbit in 1977, and then 5 years later in 1983, the Return of the King adaptation, but those matters for another day. It doesn't just make sense because Frodo's one telling the story about that he's missing a finger as he lights his pipe, so even though he did make it back alive, it was not entirely unscathed at all. And even though the film garnered mixed reception time and sense, it did gain some of a cult following. And one of the fans ended up being a one Peter Jackson, and he actually definitely was working up through the ranks to making all these highly underrated, modestly budgeted horror films until the time came, whether or not when it was asked to be a two-part adaptation. Eventually something clicked, and they said, why are we talking about this being two movies? It's 3 books, it should be 3 movies. And the rest, as I say, is history. The bottom line is this. While I may not have the same outwardly divisive feelings I once did, I mean, I have a similar mindset towards the 84 Dune adaptation, and which all the parts do include are technically accurate to the book in the sense of trying to adapt a single volume of Song by Some Fires to our movie would be as well. Oh, but it is definitely not without its flaws. I no longer think it's outright bad personally, but it is still my least favorite of Bakshi's his works. And the many ones he's made for both film and some short-lived television series, meaning the anthology Spicy City, which I will have to see if I can find somewhere. There, even with considered affairs, I will say I know a guy, and let's just say this is not the only IP I'll be revisiting either. Or, you might say, hey, in a little bit, that too much pink energy is dangerous. And anyway, I will be seeing the War of Rohirrim this weekend. I finally found a screening that'll be near me, in the same venue who that Craven's going to be playing. How about that? So I guess we'll see a which one of those takes the crown, or if we'll get like a three-way three-peat between Moana, Wicked, and Gladiator. I would consider this week the calm before, or the storm, a shadow, if you will. That'll be all for now, and take care, everyone.